Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jude Hung. She's back. She's back. You've
I'm
listened.
back.
You've missed her, listeners. And so Jude and I have done a lot of work together the last couple of years, and uh, I thought she would be the perfect person to interview me about this book that we're doing. So listeners may or may have not heard about it, but all will be revealed. Uh, I thought Jude would be a great person to interview me on about the book. So go for it, Jude. It's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. I am so honored to sit in the interviewer seat
Uh,
again with you. And I have my little list of questions.
sure.
And first, let's clear this up right away because when you say we, you and I have done a lot of things together. And when you say we, they're going to think it's you and me. But this is a bigger we working on this book. It's
Okay.
a collaboration, and Helen Keller has a quote that I'm going to quote: uh, "Alone we can do so little; together we can do so much." Helen Keller,
Brilliant.
and I think, yeah, I think it's so true. When I think of our community and all the stories and voices. Um, there's a lot of memoirs that adoptees have written, and then there's a lot of memoirs that are still inside of adoptees waiting to get out, or bits and pieces of story waiting to get out. And that undertaking, as you and I both know, can be really overwhelming. And especially if the story is emotionally charged, or trauma and things, it can be hard to actually get pen to paper and put it out. And so I feel like this opportunity, this collaboration with our community and the constellation uh, gives people potentially an opportunity to get their story or bits or pieces out that they're able to. You want to talk about that
Yeah.
collaboration?
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, a lot of people. So the idea, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're crowdsourcing ideas for a book. So we're working together with people across the adoption constellation into what the what they want adoptive parents to know, right? So when we see the adoptees out there, they've got their memoirs, they've got their advocacy, they've got their work that they want, they've got the messages that they want to get across, they want to share to help the next generation of adoptive parents maybe do things differently, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So the that's the idea. This is a melting pot of learnings, parts of people's stories, and the what what's the one thing that they, as a member of the adoption constellation, wants adoptive parents to know to help their kids thrive, right? So the podcast is all about what helps us thrive, and we do that in a long format interview, like an hour. The book is all about what helps adoptees thrive. And specifically, it's what you want adoptive parents to know uh, and to do, or maybe to don't. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And so it's from across the adoption constellation, like the podcast guests are,
Mhm.
but the audience that the book's for is for adoptive parents.
Yeah, when you first floated the idea to me, I felt like it was really powerful. And you'll likely remember I told you that I know that had my parents known more about what was going on inside of me as an adoptee, that they would have done things differently. And so I think collectively, the constellation has an opportunity here to create something that could be potentially powerful and potent in creating change. A place for us all to bring our voices together. I think sometimes we want to advocate for change and we don't know how. And I think that getting our voices together with this intention can ripple out and create some change for the next generation of adoptees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like it's when my parents adopted me in 1967, there was no training. Clearly, there is a lot of training. There is a lot of training now, and yet it doesn't always go to plan, right? What did we say on
Yeah.
that one of those webinars that we did? In theory, there's no difference between theory and practice,
Hmm.
and in reality, there's a heap of difference between training and practice. So that's where we want to capture the not only the adoptees knowledge,
Voice. Yeah.
advice, and suggestion. We want to capture, and we are capturing adoptive parents, the stuff that
Hmm.
they wish they'd learned earlier.
Before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're hard earned, they're hard won wisdom,
Wisdom.
right?
Hmm.
So that we're filling in some of the gaps that
Yeah.
that training uh, clearly all well intentioned is leaving behind.
Right. And you and I have done some of that, and you definitely have done more working behind the scene with agencies and stuff. And was some of that work the inspiration behind this? Because we saw that even though there is training, it is often not from an adoptee perspective. It was kind of lacking our voices and our insights. Our community, when I'm saying our, I don't mean you and I, but our community's voices and insights that we can bring to the table for adoptive parents to help them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole post adoption sector is the
Mhm.
Cinderella of adoption, right? Very little people, very few people are active in that space. Very few organizations. There's Case in on the East Coast, who pretty much that's what they do. But post adoption is small, fragmented, not very not full of
Mhm.
not full of resources. There are some support groups, some agencies do bits and pieces in there, but there's a howling great gap there,
Yeah.
and that's kind of one area that we want to look at filling, really.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that inspired you. And what are you hoping? Like, what is your hope with this collaboration?
That we help more adoptive families thrive.
Yeah.
This is wisdom sharing. This is insight sharing, and
Mm.
not everybody can. I can't get everybody on the show for an hour. So it was like, well, how can we make this far more bite size
Yeah.
and far more accessible, and how can we capture the nuggets?
Hmm.
It was all about the nuggets,
The nuggets. Yeah.
the nuggets of wisdom, and then how do we, and then what? But it was like it's a strange thing. I was walking the dogs, and I thought, well, because the responses to this has been great, right? So we're at I don't know, 130, 140 people
That's
from
amazing.
the constellation have already contributed towards this. And that's as of, we're recording this video on the 9th of July. I've extended the deadline, right? So the people can contribute
Okay.
right up until the 30th, 31st of August, the end of August. And I was walking dogs and I thought, well, how these these results are starting to ping in. Like I look at the spreadsheet and it's ka-ching, ka-ching, it's coming in,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, what structure am I going to put? I'm going to structure all this content because you've got some mixtures of
Right.
stories, you've got mixtures, and I thought, well, why don't I just put it in this Thrive framework that we've got?
Oh, nice.
So so that was the idea there. And actually, I was stuck. I thought I had the question on my mind. I thought I'll put it on the back burner. So I put it on my back burner, and like 90 seconds later, it came through. So that's that's going to be the structure.
I like that. And do you find that your history with like publishing, editing is coming into play and helping you to gather all of this together?
It
And
it may do. I hope so. I hope so. I'm totally focused on getting the number of contributions up at the moment. That's
okay.
my focus. I know
Okay, people, do
structure
you
I'm
hear
going to
that?
yeah, yeah,
Right? People were inviting you into this opportunity to write and contribute with this collaborative work of wisdom for adoptive parents. And anybody in the constellation is welcome to submit their writing. We'll tell you more about that at the end.
yeah.
Um, have there been any surprises or aha moments as you're gathering these stories and reading through people's submissions?
Yeah. So people are putting a lot of story in. I'm asking for insights, and I
Okay.
should have put, I just there's one question, and I should split it down into two questions. I should have had asked a context question, a story question, and a
Mm-hmm.
learning question. But anyway, the structure is as it is, um, and some bits are really tiny, and some people have put huge amounts in. So it's going to be very interesting getting to the bottom of it.
Okay. Yeah. Have you had any aha moments? Like, right, because as adoptees, we hear a lot of stories, especially you're interviewing all the time and you're hearing story. Uh, and even if our stories differ, there's kind of that thin line of similar experiences. Have you had any insights or like, especially maybe from the birth mothers or parents or the adoptive parents that were like, oh, just a different perspective?
Just the variety,
Okay.
just the variety.
Yeah.
I've, I've not, I'm totally focused on increasing the number of contributions. So I haven't spent a lot of, so
Okay.
I spend my time thinking, okay, well, how can I get more contributions, right? So I was talking to from, um, somebody from Adoption UK. So it's
Mhm.
largely adoptive parent group here in the UK, obviously, as the name suggests. And she said, well, why don't we do a podcast about it? And then rather than just sharing the link, and I thought it was a great idea. And then off the back of that, I thought, okay, so what other podcasts can we do? Why don't I do one of my
That's
own
fun.
episodes on it? And how are we going to do that? Well, we'll do it as an interview. Who's going to be interviewing me? Jude. So there you are. That's the
There
way
you
that the creative things goes.
go. Right. So right now you're focused on just getting more submissions,
More
and then you're going to
partners.
go through the
Yeah.
material more.
More
Gotcha.
partners, more partners sharing their
Story,
that
their
more
wisdom, their nuggets.
more partners sharing the concept with more of their network. So
Right.
there's a there's a you remember Live Aid and Bob Geldof and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So there's a series just come on the BBC, and it's a documentary, and it sets out it's three episodes. So the first episode is about Band Aid, which is the song. The second,
Hmm.
and We Are the World, We Are the Future, the American version, and then the second The second episode was about Band-Aid. A live, no, was it Live Aid Band-Aid when they did the dual cast? So
Yeah,
there was a concert in Philadelphia in JFK
yeah,
Stadium in Philadelphia. This is 1985, and there's a concert in Wembley Stadium, and there's
yeah,
and yeah, Phil Collins did gigs on both, right? And then there's Live
yeah.
Aid, right? But this is how the documentary shows how it started. So Bob Geldof was watching the news about and saw this horrible story about the famine in Ethiopia.
Mhm.
And he thought, I've got to do something about this. And next day he was walking down the street and he bumped into Sting, right?
Mhm. As you do.
As you do. And he said, I'm thinking of doing this. Are you in, right? I'm thinking of doing a song about this. We've got to do something about this. Like we're musicians, we do a song, shall we? Right? And he went, yeah, I'm in. And then he bumped into Midge, the guy out of Ultravox, and he said the same thing to him. He said, I'm in. And then the whole thing started organically from
Yeah,
that. Like, so what ended up as a huge deal started with Bob having an idea and sharing it with two people he happened to live with, no, sorry, live near in
yeah,
London. So that's the power of a snowball and momentum, right? So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what
I,
we're trying
I
to do, right?
most definitely, and I do think that often what I hear in our community is like we are wanting to create change, and yet we're not cohesive. We don't have a cohesive project like this. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us, um,
Rather
to
than just say adoption is trauma,
Mhm.
right? Recognize our trauma.
Stop it. Yeah,
Yeah, whatever, um, why don't we give the nuggets of information? Why don't we share the nuggets of information with the
yeah,
adoptive parents and help people on their thriving journey? I say it a lot, right? We've
exactly.
become
Yeah,
pendulums swing too far. We started off with what do they call it? The rainbows and unicorns version of adoption
yeah,
until Nancy Berry and the Primal Wound, and then we had all these other trauma books, and now we've become trauma obsessed. Let's be
yeah,
trauma informed and thriving obsessed, right?
yeah,
Trauma informed, thriving obsessed. Let's focus on
exactly.
thriving.
Exactly. I love that. And so one of the things that I really like about this collaboration, I had somebody ask me like, oh, well, who gets the recognition? So for that person, here's a quote for you from Harry Truman. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets credit. So how about we talk about because I've seen it, how you are honoring each of the people that are contributing in this collaboration and where are the proceeds going?
Okay. So everyone that participates will be credited. And I don't know how much or how little of each person's submission I'm going to use. Who knows? But everybody that collaborates is going to be listed in the back of
Mhm.
the book, and and to a lot of the people that have been on the show have written memoirs or have written memoirs. They've written other um, kids books for adoptee kids. So what I thought is, well, give them. They wrote their books to make a change. And the hardest thing about writing a book is writing the book. And then after you've written the book, the hardest thing is getting the word out, right? So
Yeah.
everybody's going to be credited. at the back of the book, and we're going to link to everybody's Amazon page and Facebook page or website page, whatever they've got, right? So that they they're not only are they credited for their contribution, but they get their word out there about their their other materials and their services and their books, whoever they're for. So
Right.
that's one answer. And where are the proceeds going? Well, the ebook's going to be free, so there will be no proceeds from the ebook, right? But you can't give away you can't give away books. So we've got
A
to
printed book,
cover,
right.
we've got to recoup some of the costs. We've got to recoup all the costs, right? If there's any surplus, then that's gonna, and I hope there will be, then that will go to a post-adoption charity, and everybody that contributes gets to nominate the charity that they feel should get the money. So we will see what happens from that, but that's going to be the determining factor. So I'm not making any money out of
Yes.
this. Any surplus over the print and distribution costs will go to the post-adoption charity, and it'll be the one or ones will decide, what it looks like when we tot up and look at the end results from
Yes.
this.
So if somebody out there listening wants to contribute, you'll be able to get a form, like an e-form, and you fill out some questions. You also give because I've done this, I know, like your links, like Simon said, to your books or your website, and you vote for which. Like I voted, I'll just like I did Saving Our Sisters, right? That was who I voted for. So you vote for the adoption charity of your choice, and that if there
That's
are
it.
any proceeds, it will go to them.
Turn
Yeah,
them down. Yeah. So
which is a beautiful thing.
in the show notes to this podcast is a
Hmm.
link. That's the link that you go
Okay,
for you fill in your email address, you fill in your name. If you want to be anonymous, right, you can just say anonymous. I,
hmm,
I, and then you tick a box to say, or more than one box to say what part of the adoption constellation you're in. So some people might be adoptees and adoptive parents, so they would tick two boxes,
right.
and you answer a simple question and you add the links in. Obviously, if people are anonymous, they won't want links, will they? So you,
Right. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
designed to be ultra simple to do it.
It was very easy to fill out and submit. I really like this is not my area of expertise, but I really like that it is the full constellation that we're including the birth mothers. I
And
don't
dads,
know.
birth dads,
Yeah,
too. Yeah,
birth parents. Sorry,
birth parents, yeah.
birth parents. Um, I don't know. I said moms just because I'm a mom, but I don't know that experience, and yet I can imagine that there's a lot of wisdom even from their experience because so many things can happen throughout the life of the child, and reunions and just different things, and some adoptions are more open than others, and so I really appreciate that you kept that it's open, that it's inclusive of all of the members of the constellation because all of these connections and relationships impact the adoptee.
Sure. And the podcast we interview all the constellation,
Yeah,
so it had to be all the constellation in terms of the book too. We got to be consistent.
true. But I think that for the adoptee, right, if we're really wanting them to thrive, I think we have to acknowledge all of these connections and relationships that are in their life,
Yes.
no matter how little or how much they're in their life. they are, I mean, growing up, I thought about my mom quite a bit, wondered who my parents were. So even if I wasn't speaking about it, it was important to me. It would have been nice to be able to speak about it. So I'll just put that out there. But right, like so I think this
And
is
there's even
with
less,
wisdom.
like adoptees uh, often talk about not having a voice at the table or a place at the table to share their voices.
Mhm.
Arguably, birth parents and especially birth dads are even behind in terms of their advocacy. I mean, how many birth
Yeah,
dads have I interviewed on the podcast? Two, I think. How many birth mums? I don't know, eight, 10 maybe. So it's
yeah.
trying to give everybody a voice because everybody counts, right?
It's important, especially if we want to change how things are done. Um, those like how we all relate to each other within this constellation is important. Listening to each other, right? Allowing each other to have a voice in a story, even if it doesn't align with our story or our experience, it's important
Or our
and
opinion.
helpful and
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we want to move toward wholeness, and um, we need to listen to everybody's voice. Yeah, I think the dads, you're right. Like as far as being at the table, they're pretty much silent. I think they were kept out of a lot of choice making, and some don't even know. Like my dad doesn't know, right? So, yeah, yeah.
Mm. Mm. So we're trying to
Have
fill
any
speakers.
have any fathers submitted? Have you gotten any
Great question.
fathers?
Don't know. I should,
Okay.
shouldn't I?
Well,
There's as I say, I'm pouring all my energy into the getting the contributions. I have looked at this less than I perhaps should have done, but it's just my focus.
as I'm listening to this, what's interesting in my life, I've had a lot of adoptee friends. As I'm listening to this, I'm going, you know what? I have some adoptee friends who are not in the adoptee community whatsoever. Like, but they may be some great people for me to say, hey, here's a link. If you want to contribute, contribute. If you don't, no pressure. But maybe we encourage people that are listening that if they also have adoptee friends or adoptive parent friends, right? Like that they know might want to submit anonymously to share the link so that you can get more voices.
Yeah,
Um, would be wonderful.
there will be a there'll be an email going out. There'll be an email going out to ask
Okay,
everybody
following this.
to share, yeah, to share that.
To
Well,
share.
not following this, but there'll be an email going out to ask everybody that's already contributed to put uh, put it out there if they feel
Yeah.
happy doing that.
I have like five. I'm not like serious. I have like five adoptee friends that are not in community. One is also an adopted parent. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
The
I'm both
idea is
parents.
the bigger the network, the larger the audience that we'll reach.
Yeah, yeah.
It isn't going to be Bob Geldof, though. It ain't going to be Live Aid.
It may be.
But it
You
started.
never know.
We never know.
You never know. Because I think because of it being so many different voices, that is going to like get people's curiosity, like, oh, what are this isn't just one person's perspective. This is many different voices. And I, from adoptive parents, birth parents, and adoptees. So I think that may actually, make people curious, like, okay,
Well,
what
fingers
is this
crossed.
wisdom?
It's really and wisdom sounds like like who wants to admit to being wise? But we've all learned stuff. We've all learned stuff. We've all got stuff to share. And I'm thinking about how does a 10-year-old adoptee
Mhm.
know what's going on? how can they put words to that? So, how can an adoptive mum or adoptive dad talking to a 10-year-old adopted son
Yeah,
like get to like it can be tricky, right? So it
yeah, it
the
can be.
the the idea is, well, the 42-year-old adoptee who has reflected on their experience can give
Mhm.
share some insight that's going to be useful, can put stuff into words that maybe that 42-year-old, when they were 10, they couldn't put it into words, but now they
Exactly.
can. And so,
Exactly.
and that's the insight, the wisdom of the older person being shared with.
Yes, this is coming out of lived experience, right? Like of
Pure
the
lived
birth
experience.
parents,
Yeah.
of the adoptive parents who have already raised their kids to some degree, right? Like of the adoptee. Like we may not
Pure.
be
Yeah.
wise in other areas, but in this is our lived experience. And I think
We
that is
know
where we
our
have
onions.
wisdom.
We know our
Yeah,
onions. Right.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's going to be beautiful. I'm really excited.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. So, and I was going to also ask you if what was the most moving story, but you haven't been reading them so
I
much.
haven't.
So,
I haven't studied them in depth enough to do them.
yeah, I do. I'm going to go back to your history real quick and, we can close, but I just, I, I love it when there's a connection through the lived experience that prepares someone for their purpose. And, the fact that you grew up like around publishing, and I'm like, well, of course, you were prepared for such a moment as this because adoptees are, for lack of a better word, waking up to understanding the traumas that are inherent in being relinquished, right? And wanting to create change. I think in many ways, like what we're doing here through this book, giving wisdom for the next generation and hoping to help the next generation of families thrive in creating advocacy for change in the the industry, right? Like there's a lot that we would like to do, and so, but this is your arena, is writing this, like gathering all these voices and writing this book. I actually really believe that it's going to be powerful, and I hope that it gets in a lot of hands. I love that you're making it a free ebook. I mean, that's your heart and passion, and the fact that you were adopted by this family
Yeah.
prepared you for this purpose.
Yeah.
And I just have to bring that to,
Yeah.
maybe that's part of your finding home. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
So,
anything that you would like to say at the end here? An invitation or
no, check out the link, listeners. Check out the link
yes.
in the show notes, and if you haven't already contributed, then contribute and share it.
Yeah. That little they can't see it, but the little Zoom thumb went up on you saying that, and neither one of us has our thumbs up. I'm like, that's the universe saying, you're going to get more submissions. We're in.
We're in.
So we're
Thanks,
in.
Jude. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Simon, honestly, I'm really excited. I hope people are listening, and like if you feel a little prompt, like I can't write a whole book, but I can write a nugget of wisdom.
Well, oh yeah, it's I should have said that, right? It's 50 to 250 words, right?
Yeah.
That's the suggestion. And if you can't get it down to that, you just write send what you want, and picking we'll be picking the gems and putting them into the structure. So yeah, should have said that. Yeah, 50 and the deadline end
The
of August
deadline is August 31st,
31st. Are
is
there
it?
30,
31st?
there's 31 days in August. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Deadline's 31st of August. So yeah,
August 31st, and the link is going to be in the podcast.
in the show
So
notes. Yeah.
please, in the show notes, yeah, in the podcast show notes. And so please, if you have a little inkling, if you're like, well, I don't have a lot to share, but I do have this one bit of wisdom, please share it
Yeah,
and tell
and
your friends.
there are some prompts on there, right? There's some prompts for
Yes,
you so you're not starting from a completely blank page. I have added you know, as times have gone on, I've added prompts to try and make it clearer to give people more
yes,
suggestion space. Yeah.
yes.
So
So please join us in this
yeah,
collaborative work to help adoptees thrive and
yeah,
their families.
yeah. Thanks, Jude, and thank you, listeners. A little bit
Yeah,
different
thank
today,
you
right?
guys.
Yeah. Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.